All right, good morning, baseball fans. Chris here with rotopros.com. What I'm going to be doing here today is starting out by just going over some of the changes I've made to the cheat sheet, and then we're going to jump into the cheat sheet itself and just kind of break down some top pitchers and top teams to stack for the early slate as well as the main slate. If you're not watching this live, if you just scroll down into the description part and hit show more, I'm going to have, once the video is over, timestamps set up so that you can easily navigate through to the update section, the early slate, or the main slate, depending on what you're looking to research here, just to make it a little bit easier for everyone if you're not catching the show live here. Only got a few viewers here right now, so that's not really the concern. As we get more consistent with these shows, we're going to have consistent start times and stuff like that, but things are just a little bit hairy as we're trying to get things set up for that right now. So that's kind of why I'm doing the timestamps and doing the live shows a little bit early before we really have any lineups like for main slates and stuff like that. Same thing with Friday when I do the show with Josh. We don't have lineups when we do the show, so we really break down pitchers first, and then we go over some stacking options. And of course, that's where our members chat really comes in. Is we're in there right up until lineup lock and after, pretty much all day, updating the weather, lineups that come in, new value plays that pop up, any kind of issues like that. So if you're not a member yet, make sure to get over to rotopros.com, get your free trial, whether it's a weekly, monthly, or yearly membership you're signing up for. There's a free trial that's associated with each of those. And if you use promo code MLB today from the show, what you're going to get is 50% off after your free trial's out on your first payment. So really good value there. So make sure to go to rotopros.com, check it out. Pretty sure you're going to be happy with what we have to offer. Like I said, our members community chat, that's really our main focus along with this member cheat sheet. So I'm just going to turn things over now. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll take a look at the cheat sheet, because if you're not a member, you've probably noticed a few differences here in the last little while, some stuff that has been missing, and that is just due to some things that I've changed over. So I'm just going to share my screen here. We will get the sheet up so that you guys can see it. And the first thing I'm going to go over, this is the members only sheet that you are seeing. So this is going to be for RotoPros members. I do share this in the chat every morning once it is updated. There's also an early look of the sheet the night before if you're a RotoPros member. Usually about an hour after lock, I'll go ahead and update the sheet for the next day, so you can kind of get some research in early. Now, some of the changes are members only, or obviously members are the only ones that are going to see the highlighted plays from now on. I don't have any on the bats. I got a few of the bats entered in so far. That's one of the changes. Another change for members only is going to be the weather and umpire information. Like for umpires, I'm now looking at a K boost. So I'm looking at umpires' K percentage versus the average K percentage of all umpires with a large enough sample size. Like I'm usually looking at about 60 to 100 minimum home plate appearances to look at that. So that's an important piece that we've been looking at for strikeout upside and stuff like that. Weather is another thing that's going to be on the members only sheet. We've also got the model that's been working really good for me. Scrolling over all the way to the right, this is kind of the model put together. These are some of the rankings that I do. I've put together cash game as well as GPP models. So that's going to be members only from now on as well. And then just kind of moving along the sheet here, the lineups tab is going to be something that is going to be members only. I'm actually in the process of adding a bunch of more stats to this, because when you research through the team stacking tab, you can see obviously green are going to be my core plays, blue are going to be my GPP, secondary stacks, teams to stack. Now you're going to see there's some links there as well. So if you scroll, so for instance, let's just go to the early slate. I'm trying to think if one of these lineups is in. Let's just go find one. So Cincinnati, Colorado is in. So just for instance, we've got Colorado here. So say we're looking at Colorado. I'm just going to, first of all, I'm going to sort this correctly now that I've updated the odds. So we're looking at Colorado. So if you're looking at Colorado, we're, pretty good plus park, top 10 in runs and home runs in Washington there. Say we like targeting against Fed. He's got xFIP that's almost 2 runs higher than his ERA. We want to see now that lineups are in. Now that we know that we really want to target Colorado, we want to see their team stats of just the players, not so much the whole entire team, which we see here. We want to see the stats of the players that are in the lineup today. So what you're going to do is just hover over Colorado, and you're going to see that link pop up. You're just going to click that link, and it's going to shoot you over to the lineups page right to Colorado's lineup. And then you can start breaking down those stats. So this column E is just what I'm going to try and do in the future, is just kind of get that out of the way. That's the projected lineups. It also helps me to copy and paste the lineups in just to save some time. But then they're going to have the stats here. So if you're targeting Fed, you're going to be looking, first of all, you're going to be looking for some batters. Obviously, their top 4 all have strong WOBAs for the season. They're all plus WRC plus for the season. The bottom half of the lineup is a huge gap there in Colorado's lineup. And then you start breaking down the splits versus righties. So it's always going to look at the pitcher's hand and then give you the splits for that day. So as you can see, same thing. Top 4 guys in the lineup are probably going to be the ones you're going to target for Colorado if you're going that way, because the bottom 4 of the lineup are very weak in terms of overall plus their batter splits. And if you're targeting pitching, you can also look at this tab as well, because it's actually going to show you the K rate of these guys in the lineup, not just okay, let's go over here. We were looking at Eric Fed, for instance. So we were looking at Fed there, 12% K rate. Now we want to see Colorado's lineup. So we go back there, we look at Colorado's lineup. They're only striking out 21.9% of the time versus, overall, these 8 batters that are in the lineup versus right-handed pitching, they're only striking a little bit less at 21.1%. So that's why I use this lineups tab as well. I think what I'm going to do, because I am using it to help target my pitchers when lineups start getting confirmed because of this K rate and stuff like that, and just looking at their numbers overall, is I'm going to add those same links that you see in the team stacking tab to the opponent for the pitcher over here on the pitchers tab, so that you could say, okay, I'm looking at Fed. What does Colorado's lineup look like today? You could hover over that Colorado again and go just quickly link you over to here without having to come over to the lineups tab and scroll through, find what you're looking for. You can just easily just link right to Colorado's lineup on that lineups tab to go ahead and check out their K rates and their WRC plus and splits and stuff like that, rather than it's pretty much just taking it a step further than just looking on this page and seeing scrolling over and looking at the opponent versus split, because this is just the whole team for the whole season. So that includes players that aren't on the roster anymore, players that are down in the minors now, players that are injured. So we want to take it a little bit further and just look at today's lineup and how they fare in the splits, how they've been for the season. So it's just taken a little bit further than what we see the main information here. So the key to this sheet, and what I really like to do, is start by just looking at things generally, like Verlander. Okay, we got a good park. He's the most expensive. He's a huge favorite. He has a very high K rate, high swinging strike rate, that sort of thing. As you can see, the lineup is, the matchup, sorry, is not that great. Oakland is league average versus right-handed pitching. A little bit worse than against lefties. It's actually come a lot closer. They were very close. Actually, they had better splits versus lefties early in the season, but that's kind of normalized a bit. But a low K rate. So that right there says, ooh, maybe I want to go minor because of the 4% K rate of Seattle versus lefties a little bit more. Okay, well then let's go check out Oakland's lineup. And I don't have that link. It's going to be coming soon. Their lineup's not out, but once their lineup's out, we can come over here and have a look a little bit closer. And I'm actually going to have batters last 7, 14, and 30 days information on here as well, so that we can not only look at what's the lineup strikeout rate for the season, what's the lineup's strikeout rate versus this split, but we also want to see how have the batters in this lineup today performed over the not just for the season, but the last 7, 14, 30 days. What's their trends like? And that's something that you can see also. This is something I've also added to the sheet is, so let's just pull out Omar Narvaez here, for instance. So we've got batter versus split, and then we've got his whole 2019 stats profile. Scroll over a little bit more. We've got his splits versus righties and his splits versus lefties. So if you want to compare them side by side, scroll over even more, and I've pulled, this would be like the trend section. So you've got the batters And I wanted to put plate appearances in here so you can see the size, the sample size. Just, sometimes you see a batter that, whoa, his splits are huge right now. Well, he's new. He's only played a few games. Ryan Lavarnway's one. He's got amazing stats across the board. He's only got 14 at-bats. So keep that in mind. That's why I included that. We've got WOBA, WRC Plus, and ISO for season, last 30, last 14, and last 7 days. So we can really break down how a batter is trending or a pitcher is trending. So I'm going to be adding that to the lineups tab so that you can easily take things further in your research and find trends to, sell you or sell you one way or another on a player, whether it be fade or play. So the key with baseball, there's just so many stats and there's just so many things going on. We really want to, dig in and find as much information as we can, not just how's this team versus right-handed pitching for the season. How is this team for the season hitters? No, we want to know the actual lineup that this pitcher is facing and how that lineup has performed not only for the season, not only in the split, but how they performed over the last 30 days, over the last 14 days, 7 days. Are they struggling? Are they trending up with their stats? So just one way to really take things further, and that's going to be another thing that's going to be on the members only side of things on the sheet, and that's what you're looking at here today. For anyone that's just popping into the show here, that's what you're going to see here. Also new since I did the daily, like over on our YouTube channel, I've got a cheat sheet overview video. So I've got starting pitcher report that's on there. So this is something, I'm not sure if it was on there, that original video. Either way, this is something we can use to link in and dig a little bit deeper as well. I'm just going to sort by games started here so we can get up to the starters. Obviously, the guys that are going to be the openers a lot, like, of course, Ryan Stanek. He's going to show up here as well. But we start looking at Trevor Bauer. We've got a stats, same as the other page. I just wanted to add a little bit of stats to this page as well. ERA, xFIP, K percentage, swinging strike rate, walk rate, and then we've got all the pitches here. So we've got four seam, sinker, cutter, slider, changeup, curveball, and splitter. We've got the usage of each pitcher using each of those pitches, the velocity, the average velocity, and then the value, which is pulled from Fangraphs, and that's just showing how well. So Garrett Cole has a 1.56 value fastball. That's one of the highest in the league. So you can see Brandon Woodruff, he's right there as well. We can actually go and we can sort that tab. So if you are a member and you want to check out this stuff and you want to do some sorting and stuff, go up to File, make a copy, call it whatever you want, click OK. It's going to open up an editable version so that you can go ahead and sort. So if we wanted to sort fastball values, you can just go in here and sort Z to A, which is highest to lowest. A lot of these guys that show up at the top are going to be relievers. I'm working on a way to separate the starters and the relievers so that we can have a better indicator, just a better way to sort the columns and find this information. But we can go, let's look at Woodruff. He's got, so we can tell that he's the top starter. Glasnow, but he's got a smaller sample size, obviously. So Glasnow's got a really good fastball as well. But with a sample size of 10 or more starts, even say 20 or more starts, let's just go with 15 for now. Brandon Woodruff's in there with a top-notch fastball. Then we go down, we see Mike Soroka at 1.85. Then we can start looking at sliders. You just really break down that in whatever pitcher you're looking at that day, what pitches he throw. And then something else you can do is once you decide what pitchers that pitcher throws and throws well, or maybe which pitches he doesn't throw well, if you're looking at it from a stacking standpoint, is go over to Fangraphs, go up to teams, go to team batting stats. And once you get into team batting stats for the season, you can actually click on pitch value. And once you do that, so we're looking at, say, a pitcher that he throws a lot of sliders, but it's maybe a below average slider. Okay, let's go sort by sliders. And this just weighted sliders, like per /C there, that's just put it into context per 100 pitches, just so that we can normalize all the teams and compare them against each other. Now, keep in mind that these pitch values are a backwards-looking stat. It's not really, it's got a very low correlation to, future performance and stuff. But it's always good to look at, because we do know that this pitcher does throw 25% sliders. Their average sliders, he's facing, say, the Astros or Red Sox. You're maybe going to want to stay away from that pitcher a little bit if that's one of his main pitches and it's not his best pitch, because the Astros and Red Sox obviously are two of the top teams hitting sliders this season. by a large margin. There's only 5 teams with a positive ranking against the slider this year, and they're like 0.45 and 0.53. So keep that in mind. That's just another way I do my research, using that starting pitcher report. This team pitch value stuff, this is just more updates that I'm going to be bringing into the sheet. For any of you that have been following me, you know that I've been adding a little bit to the sheet here or there, probably 1 or 2 things per week as we move along, so whether it be suggestions from you, whether it be things that I just find it easier for me to research myself that I can pass along and that you guys can research as well. Just end up giving a bunch of different stuff and updating a bunch of different things. So we also got the bullpen report. I believe I've showed you guys this before, but for anyone new, I'm just going to go over it here real quick again. Updated daily. I like to look at this mainly from, I guess, for starters, I like to look at it when I'm looking at a pitcher that maybe doesn't necessarily go like a non-Verlander that or Bauer that doesn't get that long leash where they're going 120 pitches, 110 pitches, they're going 6, 7, 8 innings routinely, like consistently. Guys that are maybe going a little bit less. Let's look at maybe like a Lester or John Gray that are maybe 5, 6 innings pitchers on average. Guys that are only getting that deep into the game. But we're going to be, we're really targeting a guy like that on any given slate. But we know he's probably only going to go 6 innings and give us that quality start. But we really want that win. Capitalizing on those win points is huge. Well, one way to do that is if that pitcher leaves, gets the quality start, gets 6, 7 Ks, having a really good start, we don't want the bullpen to blow it. So, I mean, there is a lot of variance, and even a good bullpen can blow a win for the pitcher. But, the odds are saying that a better bullpen is obviously going to be better for that pitcher. So that's why I'm looking at the bullpen report. So if I'm targeting, let's just say, Colorado versus Washington tonight, I'm looking at John Gray. I know he doesn't go deep into games. I'm hoping he can get me 5, 6 strikeouts, get into the 6th inning, maybe get through 6 innings, get me that quality start on FanDuel. But now I want to make sure that he's going to close out the deal. I want to go over to bullpen report, and I'm obviously going to search for Control F, search for Rockies. As you can see, if we just go and sort by season here, best ERAs for the season, they are bottom 6, bottom 7 in the entire league. Start looking at the trends in the last 30, last 14, last 7 days. Their bullpen has been terrible. So that's maybe a direction. That kind of steers me in a different direction for that pitcher. Whereas if that was the Astros bullpen, we know the Astros bullpen is elite, helping Verlander out for sure, closing out the deal if he doesn't go the full. But we know that Verlander can go 8, 9 innings quite easily. He doesn't walk a ton of guys. He gets a ton of strikeouts. He's an elite pitcher that goes deep into games. So if the Astros bullpen was somewhere down here, I wouldn't be as concerned just because Verlander goes deeper into the game, so it's not as a big a deal. But if you're looking at a pitcher, like I said, that goes only 5, 6 innings in a game and you want to use him as one of your pitchers, you're going to want to, double check and just make sure they got a good bullpen because it's going to give you better odds to get that win. So that's the way I look at it from a pitching standpoint. When you get to the hitting/stacking standpoint, what I do is I look at it from the other side of things where I will look for a bad bullpen. So we know that obviously Baltimore is the one that I always pick out and we always talk about because they've got one of the worst starting rotations in baseball. They got rid of their best pitcher in Cashner, so it got even worse when it comes to a whole collective staff. So we target against them for stacking and stuff like that. But we know the starter ain't going 5, 6, 7 innings. They're going to beat up on him more times than not early, and he's only going to go 3, 4, 5 innings. So to capitalize on our run scoring potential, we're going to want to look at the bullpen. We want to attack the bullpen, obviously, because that pitcher, if they beat up on him, isn't going to be going deep in the game. So that's another way I look at the bullpen report. So, for instance, we'll look at the Orioles, dead last on the season. They have trended up, over the last 30, 14, 7 days, that type of thing. But still one of the worst bullpens in baseball, no matter what. You start looking at the K percentage. They're way down on K percentage, so they're not going to get a lot of strikeouts. The whip is high, so they're giving teams a lot of opportunities. They've really tightened up on the home run to fly ball rate, so that's one thing I look at. They start out 19%, 15, 13, and 8. So that's kind of a backwards trend versus like Rangers and Mariners right now. They're both running over the last 7 days 30%, 30% plus home run to fly ball rate. So that's going to be something where I'm going to be looking to target against Rangers and Mariners pitching when they have a below average pitcher in there, because their bullpen's been so bad. So that's where we're going to get those double-digit 10-plus run outings, is teams are going to be able to score late on those teams. So those two are, along with the Tigers, are two of the worst bullpens when it comes to giving up home runs lately. Keep that in mind when you're doing your stacks as well. So that kind of goes over some of the things with the sheet that I have added, some of the things that I have flipped over to be members only for now. So keep that in mind as well. If you have any questions, make sure to hit me up on that as well, because I will be adding a lot more to the member stuff going forward. I just wanted to get a nice collection of stuff before I turned everything over. It's been kind of a slow process, but I wanted to give just a little bit more value to the RotoPros members with some of this members only stuff that I put a lot of time and effort into, hours and hours of setting the sheet up and adding all these different stats. Because obviously it means a lot to me. It's exactly how I research day in and day out. I want our members, our paying members, to feel like they have something even more of value when signing up to RotoPros. So get over to rotopros.com, get your free trial, come in and check out all the changes that I've made, all the stuff, all the one-on-one coaching that we have in the community chat. And with that, let's jump into some picks here. So we're going to look at the two slates. So we do have a doubleheader today. We've got Colorado, Washington. Now, the tricky part about this slate, and you're going to notice on the sheet here, if you're trying to research the main slate, is that Colorado, Washington is on the early slate, and then game 2 is on the main slate. For DraftKings, the batter prices are different, which just kind of really throws things off from a projection standpoint. But either way, what I'm going to be doing with the sheet today, and what you're going to notice is, once game 1 is updated, I will go ahead and change the pitchers and get Colorado, Washington down here into the main slate. So for the early slate, when I go ahead and for instance, Washington, Colorado lineup is in, you can see the batting order here to the left of each batter, and that's something that's going to be members only as well. That batting order, I go ahead and erase all the other Washington players that aren't starting. So like Howie Kendrick, for instance, I'm not going to do that for Washington, Colorado on the early slate, just because some of those batters might be in game 2. So I just want to leave that until game 2, so that when I switch it over and I enter the new pricing from DraftKings and FanDuel, once the early slate has started, those prices will update, and then I can update the sheet for you for the main slate. So keep that in mind with the two slates today. So we've got 7 games early. We've got 8 games in the main. We've got 1 game starting at 12:10 Eastern here in about an hour. Boston at Tampa Bay, David Price at Charlie Morton. So it's a good pitching slate. I mean, if you're playing Showdown today, definitely could be a slate where you maybe want to go double pitcher, then grab some value guys, just some value bats that can maybe get you a single, double, maybe an RBI in there. But I think it's maybe one of those, both teams are projected kind of right around that 3.6 to 3.8 runs. So it would be a great slate to jump on 2 pitchers. If you want to be contrarian, definitely go ahead and jump into, maybe going with, maybe 1 pitcher and then load up on 1 team if you want. But if you go all bats, I think that's going to be a little bit contrarian on the Showdown slate today. So keep that in mind. Not really a big proponent of batter versus pitcher myself, just because the sample sizes are never really large enough to draw any conclusions. Like, for instance, you've got Tampa Bay versus David Price. Well, David Price is an older veteran pitcher. Some of these Tampa Bay hitters, like maybe Avisail Garcia, Mike Zunino, Kevin Kiermaier, some of the older players on the Tampa squad, are we really putting a lot of weight on how a batter did against a pitcher maybe 2-3 years ago? I mean, we talk about a lot. Lucas Giolito's a great one. He got crushed last year. His 2-seam fastball got absolutely murdered last year. He was a pitcher that we targeted against every single game. Every team he faced is going to have good BVP against him last year, especially the teams in the division that faced him 2 or 3 times. This year, he's a completely different pitcher. He's kind of, he's right up there. If you had the top 5 in the Cy Young and the AL, he's probably right up there. So that's where BVP really gets me, is pitchers alone make tons of changes from year to year. So if they've got bad BVP numbers against a pitcher, that could likely change the next year because of a totally different approach. Maybe that batter was really good against two-seam fastballs. He doesn't throw that pitch anymore. So that's just, there's a lot of context in BVP that isn't readily available just by looking at those BVP numbers. Like, this guy's 4 for 10 against him. Well, when were those at bats? Were they last year? Were they this year? Were they 2 years ago? Is the pitcher throwing different pitches now? Was the weather crappy in one of those games? Was the weather good in one of those games? Was one of the batters injured? Like, there's just so many things, so many context things that just aren't there, that yes, I will look at the BVP to say, okay, this guy's had success against him, and then just start digging in deeper to find the answers why. That's the biggest thing. Is yes, a stat can tell us something, but we really want to go dig deeper and find out the why, because there's so much more in baseball than just this guy's 4 for 10 against him in his career. So that's the way I look at it. So keep that in mind. Just another little rant on BVP. Like I said, I will look at it. If I'm deciding between two players, I will go have a look, but I'll also dig deeper. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is dig deeper into some of these numbers. Don't just look at one number and say, okay, yeah, I'm locked in on this guy. No, let's dig deeper. Let's go deeper than our competition. I mean, things are getting harder these days with DFS. Everyone's getting better. The competition's getting better. There's more sites out there providing excellent information, excellent optimized, excellent projections. So we have to be sharper. We have to dig deeper into these stats and be ahead of the game. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So on the early slate, I'm going to jump into the early slate right now. So we've got Colorado at Washington, Philly at Detroit, Oakland at Houston, Cincinnati at Milwaukee, Baltimore at Arizona, Texas at Seattle, and the Cubs at San Francisco. So all those games obviously highlighted in gray. So for pitchers, I mean, it's pretty simple for me at the top, looking at Justin Verlander. He is the most expensive. There is a large gap there, but the talent gap is also there. Sure, he and Minor have about the same ERA. Minor's actually a tick better, but Verlander's got the much better xFIP. I believe it's top 10 in the entire league when looking at xFIP, versus Minor. Maybe looking at a little bit more regression. A little bit has come for him, but the big difference here is 7% greater K rate and almost 4% greater swinging strike rate, and then that's upside. So we know that Verlander, just knowing Verlander versus Minor, if you're a baseball fan, Verlander's got a ton more upside. The numbers also back that up. And then even on the safety side of things, 5.4% walk rate. He's walking a little over 3% less batters than Minor. So that's there as well. They're both only giving up about 33% hard contact, which is good. As you can see, Verlander doesn't give up as many, he doesn't produce as many ground balls. He gives up more fly balls than his competition, almost the worst on the slate with anyone with a large enough sample size. I'm not too concerned with these high elite pitchers with high K rates, low walk rates, that sort of thing. I don't think they get in a lot of trouble when it comes to giving up those extra fly balls. As we've seen, he's sustained this fly ball rate for his entire career. Me and Josh talked about this in our last time Verlander was on a slate, about his fly balls, and he's sustained that fly ball rate pretty much through his entire career with a very good, like, elite ERA, xFIP, K rate, swinging strike rate. So he's easily the top pitcher for me tonight. Looking at Oakland, like I said earlier in the video, they are slightly better versus lefties. They're only league average versus right-handed pitching. It's not a great matchup. It doesn't stand out. As you can see, only a 21% K rate versus righties. We don't have their lineup yet to see what their actual lineup, but they run out pretty much the same lineup every day. So we're going to see that. But when it comes to Verlander, Cole, I was going to say Chris Sale at times this season, but for the most part in his career, Max Scherzer, those elite pitchers like that, they can definitely sustain going up against teams with a lower K rate. Like we've seen, the Angels are like 16, 17% K rate for the season. And I guess, where is it here? Okay, I don't see them up here today. So, but it's like against right-handed pitching. You see those elite pitchers are still going and putting up 8 to 12 strikeouts against those teams. They're just that good. I start breaking down this K percentage versus split a little bit more when we get into the less experienced pitchers that maybe aren't consistently getting the, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. They aren't consistently in the 26 to 30% K rate range. Those are the guys I'm going to be a little bit more concerned with in these matchups where teams don't strike out as much in the split. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Verlander's an elite pitcher. Keeping it pretty simple, not overlooking it tonight. I'm going with Verlander today. Verlander is my #1 pitcher on that early slate. Mike Minor, John Lester, I think they both make good pivots. Obviously, you're getting a discount. My rankings here like Lester a little bit more, which I kind of do as well, which my rankings aren't taking into account the discounted price, so that just helps a little bit. They both got an 8.5 over-under game. So as for pitchers' parks, they're about the same. San Francisco's a lot better for suppressing power, #1 park in the league for suppressing power, so I like that. San Francisco overall, we know, has been one of the worst teams against lefties this season. The difference here is that they have been a lot better lately. I believe they're still #1 in runs scored in the second half since the All-Star break, so there is a little bit of risk there. Let's go just look at Lester's numbers lately. This is using Fangraphs. So in his last start against San Diego, who is a lot better against lefties, he got 6 Ks, no walks. So seeing no walks in the last 2 starts is positive. He has given up 7 earned runs in those as well. But he hasn't been terrible, since like mid-June when he gave up 6 and 4 in back-to-back starts. He's been solid. He hasn't been great. I just feel Verlander even though it is $2,600 more on DraftKings, is definitely the way to go. I kind of lean Minor. Seattle hasn't been great lately. They strike out to almost 26% of the time versus lefties. They're only slightly above average. WRC plus 107 against lefties. And then just looking at their stats lately, they've been league average over the last 14 days, which is closer to that trend of the second half, going back to All-Star game. 81 WRC plus, so 19% lower than league average, 26% K rate. So definitely like Minor a little bit over Lester, even though my system is maybe disagreeing with me there, my rankings. And that's just because I'm not looking at these last 14 days trends in my cash game model. I'm just looking at the split. So if you were to go make a copy and come in here and change this model around a little bit, looking at last 14 days performance, I'm just going to do that right now. Let's take XFIP down. Let's take odds down a little bit, and let's just plug in some last 14 days stuff. Last 14 days WRC plus. Let's go 10 there and 10 on the K rate. We get a bump to Minor there. I would obviously go, this is going to throw it out of whack, obviously, but if we put even more weight on that last 14 days, as you can see, Minor takes a big bump up to 3, Verlander drops to 11. So keep that in mind if you are creating your own copy. You want to make your own model with the system in the members only sheet. Hit me up if you have questions on how to do this. I'd like to keep all these numbers in the gray area, add up to 100. So you're going to see that there, that 100. So just make sure that says 100 before you go ahead and run your model. So there isn't any there. So I'm actually just going to go and add 15 to that to change it. Yeah, so it brings them a lot closer, those 3 pitchers. I still lean Verlander here, Minor as my second. And then going with Verlander today, if you want to get any kind of bats because of his price, you're going to have to punt pitching. This is just kind of something I've been doing a lot with DraftKings lately, is going with, on these slates, an expensive pitcher and a low one. So Vince Velasquez is what I'm looking at. Scary. Very, very scary. He's a minus 155 favorite. I don't mind the price at 6K. I'm kind of looking for about 2x from my punt starting pitcher 2 on DraftKings. So about 12 points from him. I believe he's done that in 2 of his last 4 starts. As you can see, the XFIP, the ERA is not something that we're looking at. Yeah, 2 of his last 4 starts, his last 4 starts were 13, 9, 9, and 18.7 DraftKings points. We're looking for somewhere right in the middle of that for him to hit value, to get Verlander in our lineups, and then we can still fit some bats, because I believe that's going to leave us, what do we got here? 18,300. So it's still below that $20,000 threshold. It's going to give us an average of about 3,900 per player. I'm just pulling this off the top of my head, because I know we got about 3,800, 3,750 somewhere in there when we're at that $20,000 threshold. So I kind of like going Velasquez today. Like I said, it's the K percentage we're really looking at. He does walk. Actually, the walks have been really good lately. He's only given up 3 in his last 5 starts. that you can see here since he's kind of got back into the rotation. The Ks has been up there over 1 per inning, 10.33. It's kind of in that 24-25% K rate range, which is good to see. But the whip is a little bit elevated just because of the hits. He's given up over a hit per inning. So there is some risk there for sure. But I love the matchup versus Detroit. We target them all the time. So sorry, 26% K rate for Velasquez versus a team in Detroit who's not only struggled in the short term, 77 WRC plus 29% K rate over the last 14 days. They also suck against righties a lot more than lefties. The 74 WRC plus 26% K rate. Everything lines up for Velasquez today to be the SP2. He seems like with this matchup and his K upside, he should probably be in the mid 7K range. So it feels like a little bit of a buy low. So that's the way I'm going on the early slate with pitching. Some of the stacks I'm looking at, obviously I'm looking at the Phillies. They're number one going up against Jordan Zimmerman. Bryce Harper just seems he seems like a buy low. I understand that he's not a batter that's going to be consistent throughout the season, but he's facing a below average pitcher in Zimmerman who's given up 6 or more earned runs in 3 straight starts. He walked 4 in his last start. While the ERA is at 7.51, you're going to see some regression with that. That's not sustainable by any means. He's not that bad of a pitcher. The xFIP is still at 5.4, which is still terrible. He's only striking out just barely over 6 per 9. The home runs is the only thing he hasn't given up a lot of. So keep that in mind, that the upside, that kind of reduces the upside a little bit. But I'm definitely liking the Phillies lineup here today. Probably, the top 4 is going to be my favorite for sure. You got Kingery, Hoskins, Harper, and Realmuto. But they're a team where if you're not stacking them and you're just looking for value to try and fit Verlander in there, I like Brad Miller and Cesar Hernandez, who are projected kind of in that 5-6 spot. Neither of them are going to give you a ton of upside, but they're both very cheap. Zimmerman has been, I believe, slightly better against lefties. Okay, yeah, a lot worse against lefties. Not slightly better, sorry, I meant slightly worse, but he's been a lot worse. He's given up a 397 WOBA, 513 slugging percentage to left-handed bats. Breaking it down a little bit further, he's got a 545 xFIP versus lefties. So, and then hard contact, he's up over 43% hard contact versus lefties. So I'm mainly concentrating on the lefties. So Harper would be my number one, a little bit of a buy low, points per dollar wise. He's a good play, better play on DraftKings. And then for value, like I talked about, Cesar Hernandez and Brad Miller, both left-handed bats today as well. You could also punt. You could go with the bottom of the lineup stack, really cheap, and go with, you could pay up possibly for 2 pitchers in Verlander and Minor, because you could stack, for instance, Brad Miller, Cesar Hernandez, Adam Haseley, Roman Quinn, or Nick Williams. They got the DH today, and it looks like the whole bottom of their lineup from 5 down is all going to be left-handed bats. That's only projected lineup, of course, but definitely check that out. They're all super cheap, so you could do like a punt stack of Philly to get 2 expensive pitchers in if that's one way you want it to go. Or if you're using Velasquez and Verlander, or Velasquez and Minor, for instance, and you can spend up a little bit. I love going Kingery, Hoskins, Harper, Realmuto at the top of the lineup, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Phillies, that's why the Phillies are my top team, because we can attack them different ways. They can help us out in the value department and cash. They can help us out with a value stack, and they can help us out with a high-end upside stack as well. I'm just want to quickly scroll back. I forgot to go look at some questions. I see there isn't any at the moment anyway, so not too concerned there. If you do have questions, definitely fire them off about anything at all. And if you're watching this after the fact of the live part, definitely hit me up in the community chat or on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs. If you have any questions about anything that I talk about here, let me know if I'm going too fast. Let me know if I'm going too slow. Let me know if I'm missing something. Definitely give your feedback, and I will definitely make changes and make it a lot easier for you guys, or I'll fit in different stats that you guys want to see. Whatever you guys want to see, that's really why I'm doing this. So Phillies top stack. I love Texas as well against Mike Leake. He's not having a great season. He's been known to be a ground ball pitcher for his career, not giving up a lot of home runs. This season, he's really had some issues. When it comes to fly balls, he's up over 34%, which is the highest of his career. The line drive percentage is good. It's 19%. Anything under 20% is really good for pitchers. Line drives are the highest correlation to, finding hits. I'll go into a little bit deeper in some advanced stat stuff. So I really look at line drive percentage quite a bit. But the ground balls are down below 50%. He's been 50% almost every year in the last 4 years for him, and over 50% for his career average. So that kind of stands out. The whip isn't too bad. He's not giving up a ton of fly balls by any means. He's given up, and he's how many starts into his season now? 20 starts, and he's still giving up an average exit velocity of 91 mile an hour, which is a Slate high, as well as a 42% hard contact rate, which is troublesome to me. And I just want to look at his splits here real quick to see, we want to target lefties or righties. It's been pretty even. 317 WOBA to lefties, 335 to righties, 10 home runs to lefties, 14 to righties. The slugging percentage is higher to righties. So a little bit reverse splits for him. So we can definitely target both sides of the plate. It doesn't scare me away from using lefties by any means or using righties by any means. 38% hard contact rate at least to both sides of the plate. The home runs are there to both sides. So definitely looking at Texas and looking at some bats for them. You got Chu and Santana at the top. Santana is one that I'll definitely target on FanDuel. I'm just going to jump over and have a look here at first base. The one thing that stood out to me with him is the price differential. That's why I run these two prices side by side. This is why I play both sides. We can always get some nice price differential between the two sites. Now, 3,400 on FanDuel, 5,000 on DK. Now, keep in mind that he isn't first base eligible on DraftKings. I believe he's outfield, third base, something like that. So he's not first base eligible, but definitely a good way to look at that price differential. So he stands out for me when looking at the Texas lineup today. Mazzara is still pretty cheap. Hunter Pence is back. His price is going up, and he does have that power upside. Odor's coming off a 2-home run game. Is Drupal Cabrera. So you can dig deep into their lineup as well. I don't think they're going to be super high owned by any means. Arizona is going to be up there against John Means, who's starting to see some regression coming his way. Definitely like looking. Tim LaCastro makes sense at the top of the lineup if he's going to be leading off against a lefty. Kettle Marte. He's actually a batter. Outfield, Chris. He is actually a batter. He's had great splits here against lefties. He's been good lately. Arizona's been rolling, so I definitely like looking at them. You've also got Eduardo Escobar. He's a batter that I will always target. Even sometimes I'll do it just for GPP to get the correlation of my Arizona stack in there against righties, but he is, as you can see here, much better against lefties. 452 WOBA versus lefties, 332. He's only league average against righties, well above league average against lefties. So I'll definitely be looking at Arizona as well. And then Baltimore as a cheap stack. I normally only target Baltimore against lefties. They're going up against Taylor Clark today. He is having a rough rookie season. Seeing the Baltimore down here, I think they're going to be lower owned because people know by now Baltimore versus lefties, that's where you're going to get your value because you got your Alberto, Nunez, Mancini, Severino. Those four guys absolutely crush left-handed pitching. I think Hanser Alberto actually leads the league in average, which I don't really look at too much, but still it's impressive that he's got like a 396 average or something like that against lefties, leads the entire league. Taylor Clark has a 6.50 ERA in the season, 6.01 xFIP, so that ERA is not getting a whole bunch better. 18% home run to fly ball rate. He's not striking out a lot of guys. He's walking like multiple batters every game except for every game in 6 of his last 7 starts. He's had at least 2 walks. So he's given up a lot of opportunities. The whip is there, so he's going to give some opportunities. Really the number one guy I'm looking at, and I will look at him from a cash game perspective, is Jonathan Villar. When they lead him off sometimes against lefties, I really laugh because his splits are gross against 70 WRC plus against lefties, 155 ISO, 27% hard percentage. I mean, he doesn't have that hard contact rate against lefties either, but at least he's league average. So if he's in the leadoff position, I definitely like him. A little bit more on FanDuel at that $3,200 price tag, so keep that in mind. But I will use Baltimore as a GBP stack in there just because I think a lot of people will avoid that. and go to other teams, and they'll look for Baltimore when they're against left-handers. So I will use that to a little bit of an ownership advantage and use them in GPP. All right, we're going to dip into the main slate here. I kind of covered. I don't see any questions on the early slate. We got locked for that in a little less than 2 hours. Like I said, their games start in here at 10. So we're going to jump into the main slate and have a look at some pitchers that I like. And we're going to start with Shane, don't call me Justin Bieber. 10-5 on DraftKings, 10-1 on FanDuel. Definitely don't mind that price whatsoever for him. He's getting up into that elite tier of pitchers. Like I said, on FanDuel, he's 10-1. We've seen him almost in that 11K range lately. Like his last 3 starts, he was 10-6, 10-8, and 10-4. So it feels like we're getting a little bit of a buy low on him at a 10-1. And then we look at his DraftKings price. He's 10-5 tonight, and he's 10-5, 10-8, 10-6, 10-8. Earlier in the year, he was up in that 10K range. So I'm not really too concerned. Doesn't feel like we're paying too much for him. He's facing a team in Toronto. It's got an 85 WRC plus, 24% K rate versus right-handed pitching. They were on a good stretch hitting lately, but that's kind of fallen off. They're about 15 to 20% below average WRC plus over the last 7 and 14 days. Not too concerned there. Bieber has, while the ERA is really good at 3.69, he has the 3rd best xFIP in the entire league, tied with Hyun-Jin Ryu. We know how good he's been. He's probably your NL Cy Young leader right now. Max Scherzer might have something to say about that, but pretty close. So seeing that Bieber's in that conversation with those kind of guys in terms of xFIP, which is a little bit better indicator of how a pitcher's pitched, that definitely puts him at the top of my board against him, especially in a matchup against Toronto. 31% K rate. That is 3rd on the entire slate to Justin Verlander and Lucas Sims, who has a small sample size, so really that's 2nd on the entire slate. Elite 14% swinging strike rate. He's right there in terms of Verlander when we're looking at walk rate, which is reducing opportunities for the other team, which we like to see for cash games. And then, if you want to compare him to Verlander, because the numbers across the board so far that we've looked at are pretty similar. He's given up, or he's producing more ground balls than Verlander and given up 13% less fly balls. So that's very impressive. Now, you start looking at the hard contact. He's given up 45% hard contact, which is near the top of the league. But when we start breaking down, his xWOBA is about 30 points higher than his WOBA. So there's probably some more regression coming for him when breaking down these numbers. Even the xSlug is higher. 15, we would have got 37 points higher than his actual slugging percentage given up. So that tells me there is regression coming for Bieber. But with the combination of those numbers, not that big of a gap combined with an xFIP, that is 3rd best in the league. I don't think is a ton of regression coming for him. We don't have a huge sample size in his career to really look at and go back and see how he's performed. So definitely going to be looking at that a little bit. So keep that in mind. Syndergaard's right there as well. Being that they're the same price, I definitely lean Bieber, but Syndergaard is definitely going to be on my radar tonight, especially considering the lack of options that we do have. He's a -150 favorite, a much better par. The ERA hasn't been as good. The xFIP's only been about a quarter run better, 0.3 runs better. K rate is what concerns me, 8% less than Bieber, so the upside definitely isn't there. I mean, he's got the swinging strike rate, so I could see that those Ks start to regress to the mean, and all the other numbers are good. He's only given up 30% hard contact rate. He faces a San Diego team who I definitely like targeting right-handed pitchers against versus left, 26% K rate. They're 10% lower than league average when looking at WRC+. They're only league average over their last 7 and 14 days. So everything matches up for Thor to be a good play tonight. He just hasn't been as consistent. So he's definitely in my GPP builds, but for cash games, I definitely would lean Bieber here. And then as a cheap pitcher, to pair, especially on DraftKings as a starting pitcher too, I'm looking at Zach Gallen. He's 9th in my model right now. Both of these pitchers actually in this game I will be looking at as SP2s. Obviously, Gallen, I think, is going to be a little bit lower owned. So far through 5 starts in his career, he's only allowed 1, 3, 2, 2, and 1 earned runs. He's only given up 2 home runs. The biggest issue is the walks. He's walked 9 in his last 2 starts. The K upside, he's about, I would say, he's right now at 10.5 Ks per 9. He's more of a 1 K per inning type guy. So that's there. It's a plus matchup. He's got a 26% K rate. It's plus matchup against a below average in splits, just a below average offense overall in the White Sox. And you got Ronaldo Lopez on the other side, who I have a lot more trouble playing just because of his inconsistency. I mean, he was touted early on in his career as a top, going to be a top pitcher. It just really hasn't formulated, but he's been decent. Like his last 2 starts against Tampa Bay and Oakland on the road, he's only given up 9 hits while striking out 15 and walking just 3, and only 2 earned runs in that time. So he's been tremendous lately. That's 6 and 7 innings in those 2 starts. And now he faces Miami. Arguably, Detroit would have something to say. Arguably, Miami is the worst offense in baseball. And at 7,000 on DraftKings, if that's the way we're looking to go as our SB2, he's only going to need 14 points really as a punt play for him to hit value. And, he's gone around that 10 to 14. Last start was 25. We're missing the one before. So his last 2 starts are really good. He crushed value like 3-4 times at these prices. He's hit 3-4 times value. Before that, some of his bad starts, he had one against Detroit where he only scored just above 0 points. But he's been like 8, 9, 8, 28. It's risky, but any of these punt pitchers at these prices are going to be risky. I would rather take a risk on a less talented pitcher in an extreme good matchup like Lopez than, say, a more talented pitcher in, let's just go with J.A. Happ. He is a more talented pitcher, obviously, but he's got a much tougher matchup. Sure, he's only 200 more, but he's got a much tougher matchup against a very powerful Minnesota offense. So Lopez and Gallen are going to be my cheap SB2s. Bieber's my number 1 pitcher. I'll be using him in cash games. Syndergaard's going to be GPP core for me just because he's been a little bit less consistent. And then jumping into some of the stacks I'm looking at tonight, obviously the Dodgers versus Jaime Barria. Dodgers are going to be number 1. They hit righties a lot better. I mean, they hit both. They're only about league average, actually, against left-handed pitchers, as you can see this year as a team. They're 19% better than league average. Number 1 team against right-handed pitchers this season. 2nd in power to only Minnesota against righties. And Barria, he's got a small sample size. He's been in and out of the bullpen this year. He's given up home runs in 4 straight appearances. 2 of those were starts. So 6 home runs and three starts, but it is 9 appearances on the season. That's a 15% home run to fly ball rate. He does got some K upside. In there, he can strike guys out. He's about a K per inning. The ERA is at 7.4. xFIP's a lot better. 4.7 still is not great. So I'll definitely be looking at him. And I mean, what stands out more than anything other than all those numbers is the whip that I talk about. I'll always talk about whip. Walks plus hits per inning pitched. And why is that key? Because the more walks and hits per inning that a pitcher gives up, that's more opportunities for the other team to score. And when you're talking about an elite offense like the Dodgers, you don't want to give them opportunities because they have home run power pretty much all throughout their lineup. The leadoff hitter is Jock Peterson. He's one of the leaders in the league in home runs. You've got Max Muncy, you've got Cody Bellinger, you've got Justin Turner. It's just an absolutely loaded lineup. I also like using Alex Verdugo. He's still cheap, should be hitting 2nd in the lineup in the outfield. AJ Pollock's been good since the All-Star break. He hits a bit down the lineup. He's still a good price. Talking about good prices and value left-hand bats against Barria, you got Corey Seager. He's going to be hitting down the lineup. You can go any direction with this Dodgers lineup tonight. For cash games, I like the value direction just because we're going to be using Bieber, especially when it comes to FanDuel. I'm going to be looking at like Seager, Pollock, Verdugo, Peterson as my 4 bats that I'm kind of looking at for cash games. And then, like I said, you can go pretty much any direction. Keep the correlation there. When I say go any direction, I don't mean go Jock Peterson and Cody Bellinger at the 4 spot and AJ Pollock at the 6 spot. Keep that correlation and flow in your lineup. If you're going to stack the top of the lineup, keep it 1, 2, 3, 4 or 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're going to go bottom of the lineup, go 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, that type of thing. Keep the sequencing there to keep the correlation high. because, for instance, Jock Peterson gets a hit, and then Verdugo hits a double, then there's runners on second and third. Justin Turner gets walked. Bellinger steps up. All three of those players that you've got in your stack are on base. They've already got points. Now Bellinger steps up. He's got a chance to drive them all in. Best case scenario, it's a grand slam. He gets a ton of points. Plus, all three of those other guys get points. So you're like maximizing the amount of points that you can get with your stack. So keep that in mind when building stacks. I know that's probably a pretty simple concept, but for some people that are new, and I know there are a few who are fairly new to the baseball side of things when we're in terms of DFS that we've talked to in chat. So I just wanted to get that point across because it does make a lot of sense to look at that. Atlanta stands out. Brad Keller's been a lot better. He's had two kind of cakewalk matchups, I guess you could say, in his last two starts. So I'm not really looking into it thinking, okay, he's an elite pitcher now. I want to avoid him. He's faced the White Sox and Detroit, who we've already talked about being terrible offenses. He's been very good. I mean, he's given up 13 hits. That's kind of concerning. So that kind of still leans me in the way of Keller's not that great. I want to target against him. But he struck out 14 and only walked 2 in those 2 starts. But again, that was against Detroit and Chicago. Atlanta is not Detroit and Chicago by any means. As you can see, they're only just above league average against lefties and righties, but there's a ton of power in their lineup. The only concern here is Keller doesn't give up a lot of fly balls or home runs. So that's why I kind of got Atlanta labeled as a GPP play more than anything. That's the way I'm kind of leaning, just because of Keller not giving up a lot of home runs. I think the potential is definitely there. My top guy in the lineup is going to be Acuna. I really like Swanson hitting second as well at shortstop. Shortstop's kind of a bear, I guess, a little bit. Like I said, I like that's the early slate. Sorry. We've got Lindor, Swanson. You know, they don't have terrific matchups. Polanco doesn't have a terrific matchup. He's got splits against righties. Tatis is very expensive going up against Syndergaard. Shortstop sucks on the main slate, to be honest. So I'm either looking at Swanson or Lindor paying up, going against Stroman, which I don't like. He's an elite ground ball guy. Or I'm just outright punting down here with Mike Freeman again. I know he gave us an offer last night, really disappointing. But on FanDuel, he's minimum price, and he can help you get to Bieber and some more of the stronger Dodger bats rather than just the value ones that I talked about, get you to some of those top guys. So keep that in mind. Shortstop sucks. I mean, that could the whole landscape of what the shortstop position looks like could change once lineups start coming out. So that's why it's important for our Roto Pros members to stay in the community chat because I'm sharing that information through the day. I'm uploading the lineups into the members only sheet as they are confirmed. And changing my highlighted plays, about up to like the last half an hour before the slate. So definitely check in with me in the chat, and you'll be up to date on what's going on. And that's just kind of one of the main benefits that we have with the members chat is just minute to minute updates of anything going on in daily fantasy sports. So a couple more stacks I'm going to take off here. Get ready for this early slate. I like St. Louis. As you can see, they've been one of the worst offenses in the league. They're in a terrible park. I think that drives them to some lower ownership tonight. And they're facing Jordan Lyles. That's what really stands out to me the most here is just, let's just look at his numbers here real quick, just on the surface. 4.91 ERA. The xFIP's a little bit better at 4.32. He's got a 1.4 whip, and anything kind of above that 1.1, 1.15 is when I'm really, my eyes just open up big time, and I'm like, okay, that's who I'm targeting. 37% fly balls, so not bad, not great. 16% home run to fly ball rate, and that's not good. 90-mile-an-hour average exit velocity, that's not good. 42% hard contact rate, that's not good. So that all stands out. Digging in a little bit deeper and looking at Jordan Lyles' stats. He's coming off a good start against Philly, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. He did give up 7 hits there, so I would say, he maybe got a little bit lucky, but the strikeouts definitely helped. That upside definitely helped. Before that, he'd given up 14 earned runs in his last 2 starts and 3 or more earned runs in 7 straight starts before that, which is why that ERA is up around 4.91. And he's given up a home run in 7 straight, 8 of his last 9 starts, multiple home runs twice in that time as well. So that home run potential is there. And we start breaking down his splits. We want to target left-handed bats against Lyles. Left-handed bats against Lyles. 284 WOBA against righties, 408 WOBA against lefties, 392 slugging percentage against righties, 591 slugging percentage against lefties. Pretty even home runs, but again, that sample size versus lefties is going to be a little bit smaller. So we want to look at the normalized number in home runs per 9. 1.1 home runs per 9 to righties, 2 home runs per 9 to lefties. So almost double the home runs to lefties. So everything points to left-handed bats for St. Louis. I mean, I will mix in for cash games. For a stack, I'm going to be using them. You know, they're kind of like a secondary one just because of the left-handed bats, because most of their big bats are right-handed. I mean, I'm talking, don't get me wrong here, Jose Martinez is not a big bat. He's been good lately. He's hitting second. But Jose Martinez, Goldschmidt, Tyler O'Neill, Paul DeJong, although he's down the lineup and cold lately, those are 4 of their arguably biggest bats, and they're all right-handed. That's good news for value plays if you're trying to fit expensive pitchers in tonight, because I like going with Tommy Edman, who could be back at the top of the lineup as a switch hitter. So he'll be hitting left tonight against Lyles. We've got Dexter Fowler, who's cheap in the outfield. We've got Matt Wieters is cheap in at the catcher position. We've got Colton Wong at the second base position. So we've got a lot of value plays on that St. Louis lineup tonight that I absolutely love for cash games. And then I will, once again, that's a team I will go for a value stack to try and get, especially on DraftKings, to try and pay up for 2 pitchers. Like the cost of Syndergaard and Bieber is only $20,500 on DraftKings. That's only $500 over the threshold. We just need to go more of a balanced lineup. That hasn't been the optimal way to go about things on most nights this season, just because of the increase in home runs. But if you get a night, it's definitely a contrarian approach now. Before, I would want to pay up for 2 pitchers at $20,000 and get all the Ks that I could and fill in with value bats. That's not the case anymore, as we're seeing record-setting home runs per team, record-setting home runs when you're looking at the season, just pretty much record-setting home runs all around. So, contrarian, going with Bieber and Syndergaard. I don't mind that tonight, just because I have talked about a ton of value plays. We talked about St. Louis value plays. We talked about some couple Arizona value plays. We talked about Texas value plays. You know, there's a ton of value plays on this main slate, and I don't think we have to, feel too concerned about loading up on 2 pitchers and finding those value plays to make it work. So those are the stacks that I'm looking at tonight, the main ones. Obviously, there's going to be more that I'm going to add as lineups come out through the day, but that's kind of the way I'm looking. Thanks for joining me on the video. Like I said, I'm going to have timestamps so that you can either break down the early slate, you can break down the changes to the sheet that I went over first, or you can break down the main slate. I will have those timestamps in shortly after this video is over. Like I said, if you're not a member, make sure to go to rotopros.com, get your free trial to your weekly, monthly, or yearly membership. Gives you access to the members-only cheat sheet, gives you access to our sample lineup skeletons, showing you how we put our cores together each and every night in cash and GPP, gives you access to our members chat, which we have this is all set up for going, setting up what I'm trying to say is it's setting up every single sport, so we have a separate channel so that we can provide all the best information available to our customers. So thanks for joining me. Let's go build some lineups, get some green screens. Cheers, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.